The stars burned cold and distant as the Kryn warships moved like dark shadows across space. Their black hulls reflected no light, and their engines made no sound in the vacuum. But everyone in the galaxy knew they were coming. The Kryn Empire had conquered 73 worlds, and they always used the same terrible weapons to do it. The Ravagers. These creatures were monsters born from alien science and twisted genetics. They stood 12 feet tall on powerful legs that could leap across buildings. Their skin was thick as armor plating, able to stop plasma bullets without leaving a mark. 6 burning eyes gave them perfect vision in any light. Claws longer than human hands could tear through the strongest metals like soft clay. When they opened their mouths, rows of razor teeth gleamed with poisonous saliva. But the most frightening thing about the Ravagers was not their bodies. It was how the Kryn controlled them. Each beast was linked to a Kryn handler through invisible mental chains. The alien warriors could see through their creatures' eyes, feel what they felt, and command them to kill without question. No Ravager had ever disobeyed its master. Not once in 200 years of war. Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the green forests of Kepler 442b grow larger on the screen. His hands were steady, but his heart raced. The evacuation was not going well. Too many people, too few ships, and not enough time. "Sir, we have another transport ready to launch," called Lieutenant Ben Parker from his station. "That's 47 families evacuated so far." Jake nodded but kept his eyes on the planet below. Kepler 442b was a research world where human scientists studied the strange plants that grew in the deep forests. The trees were not like Earth trees. They had purple bark and leaves that glowed softly in the dark. The air smelled of flowers that bloomed only at night. It was a peaceful place where children could run and play while their parents worked. Now the Kryn were coming to destroy it all. "How long until their fleet arrives?" Jake asked. 12 hours, maybe less," replied his weapons officer, Carol Stone. "Our scouts report 3 Ravagers aboard their lead ship." 3 Ravagers. Jake had seen what just one could do. On the mining world of Titan 7, a single beast had killed 200 defenders in less than an hour. The creature had moved through the tunnels like a living nightmare, its claws ripping through rock and metal while its handler guided it to every hiding place. "Sir, we have a problem with Transport 7, Ben said, his voice tight with worry. "Engine failure during takeoff. They're going down in Sector 12. Jake's blood went cold. Sector 12 was deep in the fungal forests, far from the main evacuation site. How many people were aboard? 15, including the Martinez family. They have a daughter, Lucy. She's 8 years old. The commander closed his eyes for a moment. 8 years old. When he was 8, he was catching fireflies in his backyard. On Earth, not running from alien monsters who wanted to tear him apart. "Send rescue teams," he ordered. "I don't care if we have to strip every other ship, get them out of there." But even as Jake gave the order, he knew it might be too late. The transport had crashed in the worst possible place. The fungal forests were a maze of twisted trees and strange growths that blocked radio signals. The rescue teams would have to search on foot, and that would take time they did not have. Far below on the planet's surface, Lucy Martinez crawled out of the smoking wreckage of Transport 7. Her head hurt, and there was a cut on her arm that bled slowly down to her wrist. Around her, the other passengers were trapped under bent metal, or lying very still on the purple moss. "Mom? Dad?" she called, but got no answer. The forest was quiet except for the soft whisper of wind through the glowing leaves. Lucy had studied these trees in school. They were called whisper vines because of the sound they made. During the day, they were just strange purple plants, but at night they glowed like streetlights and filled the air with sweet perfume. Lucy found her parents near the front of the crashed transport. Her mother's eyes were closed and her father was not moving. She shook them gently, then harder, but they would not wake up. A cold feeling spread through her chest as she realized she was alone. The 8-year-old girl had been taught what to do in emergencies. Stay calm, find shelter, wait for help. There was an old research station about a mile through the forest. She had seen it on the maps during the evacuation briefing. If she could reach it, she would be safe until the rescue teams found her. Lucy took a water bottle and some food bars from the wreckage. She also found a small flashlight, though she probably would not need it. The whisper vines gave off enough light to see by once the sun went down. She kissed her parents goodbye and started walking into the forest. The trees grew thicker as she went deeper into the woods. Their branches formed a canopy overhead that blocked out most of the sky. Strange fruits hung like lanterns from twisted vines. Some of them moved when she passed, though there was no wind. Lucy tried not to think about what might be living inside them. She found the research station just as the sun disappeared behind the purple trees. It was a small building made of white metal with solar panels on the roof. The door was locked, but Lucy found a broken window on the side. She was small enough to squeeze through without cutting herself on the glass. Inside, the station was dark and empty. Dust covered the tables and chairs where scientists had once worked. But there were still supplies in the cabinets. More food, clean water, and blankets that smelled like disinfectant. Best of all, there was a basement with thick walls where she could hide if something dangerous came looking for her. Lucy made herself a small nest in the basement corner with the blankets and supplies. She ate a food bar and drank some water, then tried to sleep. But every time she closed her eyes, she heard sounds from outside. Footsteps that were too heavy to be human. Breathing that was too deep and too slow. Sometimes there were other sounds too. Metal being torn, trees falling, and far in the distance, screaming that stopped very suddenly. The Kryn had arrived. Lucy pulled the blankets over her head and tried to pretend she was back home in her own bed. But she could not forget the sounds from the forest. Something was out there, hunting through the night. Something that would not stop until it found every human on the planet. She was 8 years old, alone, and the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy were coming for her. Lucy woke up to silence. After 3 days of terrible sounds from the forest, the quiet was almost worse than the noise. She had heard the ravagers hunting every night. Trees crashed down as the massive beasts moved through the woods. Sometimes, she heard human voices screaming for help, but the screams always stopped quickly. Now there was nothing. The little girl climbed the stairs from the basement to peek out the research station's windows. The purple trees still glowed softly in the morning light, but many of them were broken or lying on the ground. Deep claw marks scarred the bark of the ones still standing. The sweet smell of whisper vine flowers was gone, replaced by something sharp and bitter that made her nose wrinkle. Lucy's stomach growled loudly. She had been eating the food bars sparingly, trying to make them last. But she was down to her last, 2 bars and half a bottle of water. If help did not come soon, she would have to leave the safety of the research station to look for more supplies. She was opening her second-to-last food bar when she heard the footsteps. They were not human footsteps. They were too heavy, too slow, and too far apart. Each step made the ground shake slightly, and she could hear claws scraping against stone. Lucy dropped the food bar and ran to the basement stairs. But before she could reach them, she heard another sound that made her freeze with terror. Breathing. Deep, rumbling breaths that sounded like a sleeping dragon from the fairy tales her mother used to read her. The breathing was coming from right outside the research station. Lucy pressed herself against the wall next to the broken window. Through the glass, she could see a shadow moving past. It was huge, much bigger than any animal she had ever seen. The shadow stopped, and she heard sniffing sounds. Whatever was out there, it was smelling the air, looking for her scent. A voice spoke from somewhere in the forest. It was not human. The words were harsh and guttural, like rocks grinding together. Lucy did not understand the language, but she could tell it was giving orders. The breathing outside the window stopped. Then she heard claws clicking on metal as something climbed onto the roof of the research station. The ceiling above her head creaked under enormous weight. Dust fell from the light fixtures as whatever was up there moved around, searching. Lucy held her breath and tried to make herself as small as possible. Maybe if she was very quiet, it would go away. A loud crash came from the main door. Then, another. Something was trying to break in. Lucy ran to the basement stairs, but she was too late. The front door exploded inward in a shower of twisted metal and broken glass. Through the doorway came the most terrifying creature she had ever seen. The Ravager was even bigger than she had imagined. Its head nearly touched the ceiling, and its shoulders were wider than her father's car. 6 glowing red eyes studied the room, moving independently like a lizard's. Its skin was dark gray with patches of what looked like natural armor plating. When it opened its mouth, Lucy could see teeth as long as her fingers dripping with green saliva. But the scariest thing about the Ravager was not its size or its teeth. It was how smart it looked. This was not just a wild animal. This was a thinking creature that had been turned into a weapon. The beast's eyes fixed on the basement stairs. It could smell her down there. Lucy knew she should run, but her legs would not move. She had dreamed about this moment for 3 nights, and now it was happening. The monster from her nightmares was real, and it was coming for her. The Ravager squeezed through the doorway and moved toward the basement. Each step shook the floor. Lucy could hear its claws scraping against the walls as it tried to fit its massive body through the narrow space. As the creature reached the top of the stairs, Lucy did something that surprised even herself. Instead of screaming or running, she spoke. "Hey there, big guy. You look tired." The Ravager stopped. Its 6 eyes turned to stare at her, and its head tilted to one side like a confused dog. Lucy had no idea why she had said those words. They just came out naturally, the same way she might talk to a scared animal. And the Ravager did look tired. Up close, Lucy could see that its armor-plated skin was covered with scars and scratches. Its breathing was labored, and there were dark circles under its eyes. This creature had been fighting for a long time without rest. "It's okay," Lucy said softly, taking a small step forward. "I'm not going to hurt you." The Ravager's aggressive posture relaxed slightly. Its claws stopped scraping against the floor, and its mouth closed. For a moment it just stared at her with those 6 red eyes. Somewhere in the forest, the harsh alien voice spoke again. Lucy could not understand the words, but she could tell they were commands. The Ravager's eyes flashed, brighter, and its muscles tensed as if it was fighting against something invisible. "You don't want to hurt me, do you?" Lucy asked. She had always been good with animals. Back home, she was the only one who could calm down Mrs. Johnson's mean old cat. "Someone is making you do this." The Ravager took a step back. Its eyes flickered, between bright red and a softer amber color. Lucy realized that the creature was struggling against some kind of control. The alien voice in the forest was trying to force it to attack, but something was holding it back. "You're not a monster," Lucy said, extending her hand slowly. "You're just scared and tired, aren't you?" The Ravager looked at her outstretched hand. For a moment, Lucy thought it might bite her fingers off. Instead, the massive creature lowered its head until its nose was just inches from her palm. She could feel its warm breath on her skin. "That's better," Lucy said, gently touching the Ravager's snout. The skin was surprisingly soft, despite looking like armor. "What's your name, big guy?" The creature did not answer, of course, but it did not pull away from her touch either. Lucy decided to give it a name herself. "I'll call you Rex," she said. "You look like a Rex." The alien voice in the forest spoke again, more urgently this time. Rex's eyes flashed red, and his muscles tensed. But instead of attacking Lucy, he turned toward the stairs as if listening to something she could not hear. "It's okay, Rex," Lucy said. "You don't have to listen to that voice. You can choose what you want to do." Rex looked back at her, and Lucy saw something in his eyes that she had not expected. Intelligence, yes, but also sadness. This creature had been forced to do terrible things, and he was tired of it. Lucy sat down on the basement floor and patted the ground next to her. "Why don't you rest for a while? You look like you haven't slept in days." To her amazement, Rex lay down beside her. The massive Ravager curled up like an enormous cat, keeping his body between Lucy and the stairs. His breathing gradually slowed, and his eyes began to close. Outside, the alien voice called again and again, but Rex did not answer. For the first time in his life, he was choosing to disobey. Lucy leaned against the Ravager's warm side and smiled. She had made a friend in the strangest place possible. Now she just had to figure out how to keep both of them alive. War leader Zextok stood in the command center of his ship, staring at the blank screen where his Ravager's vision should have been. For 2 days, he had felt nothing from the beast. No sight, no sound, no emotions. The mental link that had connected them for 15 years was simply gone. This had never happened before, not once in the entire history of the Kryn Empire. Send the other 2 Ravagers to Sector 12, Zextak ordered his soldiers. Find my beast and discover what has happened. To it. Yes, War Leader, replied Captain Vexmore. Should they destroy whatever is interfering with the connection? Zextak's 4 eyes narrowed. No. I want to see this interference for myself. If something can break our control over the Ravagers, High Command must know about it. Meanwhile, in the basement of the research station, Lucy was sharing her last food bar with Rex. The massive Ravager ate the tiny piece of nutrition bar as carefully as if it were made of glass. His huge claws picked up crumbs that had fallen to the floor, and he ate those too. You're still hungry, aren't you? Lucy asked. When was the last time you had a real meal? Rex made a low, rumbling sound that was not quite a growl. Lucy had been listening to his different sounds for 2 days now, and she was starting to understand what they meant. This sound meant sadness. Those alien guys don't take very good care of you, do they? Lucy said, stroking the side of Rex's massive head. My mom always said that if you have a pet, you have to feed it properly and make sure it gets enough sleep. Rex's 6 eyes looked at her with what Lucy was sure was confusion. The idea of being cared for was probably completely new to him. They had spent the last 2 days together in the basement. Lucy talked to Rex about her life on Earth, her parents, her school, and her pet hamster named Nibbles. Rex listened to everything, his eyes following her movements and his head tilting when she said something particularly interesting. Lucy had also sung songs to him. Rex seemed to like music. When she sang lullabies, his breathing would slow down, and his eyes would grow heavy. It was during one of these quiet moments that Lucy realized something important. Rex was not just a weapon. He was a living being who had feelings and thoughts of his own. The sound of approaching footsteps made them both look toward the stairs. These footsteps were different from Rex's. They were lighter but still too heavy to be human, and there were 2 sets of them. Rex stood up quickly, positioning himself between Lucy and the stairs. His muscles tensed and a low growl came from deep in his throat. But this growl was not directed at Lucy. It was a warning to whatever was coming. It's okay, Rex, Lucy whispered. Are those your friends? Rex shook his massive head. The growl grew louder. 2 more Ravagers appeared at the top of the stairs. They were similar to Rex but smaller, and covered in fresh scars from recent battles. Their eyes burned bright red, and saliva dripped from their open mouths. Unlike Rex, these creatures still obeyed their handlers completely. The lead Ravager spoke in the harsh Kryn language. Lucy could not understand the words, but Rex clearly could. He responded with a series of growls and clicking sounds. The conversation lasted for several minutes, with both sides becoming more agitated. Finally, the lead Ravager roared and started down the stairs. The second one followed close behind. Rex roared back and moved to meet them halfway. Wait! Lucy called out. She squeezed past Rex and stood on the stairs between him and the other 2 Ravagers. Stop fighting! The 2 attacking Ravagers froze, in surprise. They had never seen a human child who was not running away in terror. Lucy looked so small standing there, barely reaching Rex's elbow, but she showed no fear at all. You don't want to fight, Lucy said to the lead Ravager. I can see it in your eyes. You're tired too, just like Rex was. The creature's red eyes flickered to amber for just a moment. Lucy took a step closer. Someone is making you do this, isn't they? The same voices that were trying to control Rex. You don't have to listen to them. The second Ravager made a confused, whining sound. Lucy realized that these creatures had probably never heard a kind human voice before. All they knew was the harsh commands of their alien masters and the screams of their victims. It's okay, Lucy said softly, extending her hands toward both Ravagers. You can choose for yourselves. You don't have to hurt anyone. The lead Ravager took a step back, its eyes shifting from red to amber and back again. Lucy could see the same struggle that Rex had gone through, The creature was fighting against years of mental conditioning and psychic control. "That's it," Lucy encouraged. "You're stronger than their voices. You can decide what you want to do." With a sound like breaking chains, both Ravagers suddenly stopped their aggressive posturing. Their eyes settled on the softer amber color and their mouths closed. For the first time in their lives, they were thinking for themselves. Rex moved up beside Lucy and made a series of gentle sounds to the other two Ravagers. Lucy did not understand the words, but she could guess what he was saying. He was telling them about the past 2 days, about rest and kindness and being treated like a living being instead of a weapon. The 3 Ravagers touched noses in what Lucy recognized as a greeting between friends. Then all 3 of them looked at her expectantly. "Well," Lucy said with a smile, "I guess I have 3 friends now, but we need to find more food. And we need to get off this planet before those alien guys figure out what happened." As if summoned by her words, the harsh alien voice spoke from somewhere above them. But this time it was not coming from the forest. It was coming from inside the research station. War leader Zextak had arrived. Lucy heard boots clicking on the floor above, along with the mechanical sounds of alien weapons being prepared. Rex and the other 2 Ravagers moved protectively around her. But Lucy could tell they were nervous. They had been controlled by these aliens for so long that facing them directly was terrifying. "You cannot hide forever, human child," Zextak called down the stairs in accented but understandable English. "My beasts belong to the Kryn Empire. Return them to me, and I will make your death quick." Lucy looked up at Rex, who was trembling slightly. She realized that this alien had been the voice in his head for years, forcing him to kill and destroy. The thought made her angry in a way she had never felt before. "No," she called back up the stairs. "They don't belong to you anymore. They belong to themselves." Zextak laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Foolish child. The Ravagers are weapons created by Kryn science. They have no will of their own." "Yes, they do," Lucy said firmly. She walked to the bottom of the stairs with all 3 Ravagers following her. "And I'm going to prove it." She looked up at Rex and smiled. "Ready to show this bully that you're not his weapon anymore?" Rex's 6 eyes blazed with determination. For the first time in his life, he was going to fight for something he chose to protect. Lucy walked up the stairs with Rex, Storm, and Blade following behind her. She had given names to the other 2 Ravagers during their short time together. Storm was the bigger one with lightning-shaped scars across his chest. Blade was smaller, but moved like a dancer, quick and graceful despite his size. War leader Zextak stood in the main room of the research station, surrounded by 6 Kryn soldiers. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old leather. His 4 eyes were arranged in a square pattern on his face, and they all stared at Lucy with cold hatred. "So small," Zextak said, speaking English with a thick accent. "How can something so tiny break bonds that have held for centuries?" "Maybe because you never tried being nice to them," Lucy replied. She was scared, but she tried not to show it. Her father had always told her that bullies were usually cowards underneath. Zextak raised a device that looked like a twisted metal cone. "This is a neural amplifier. It will restore my control over the beasts and remove whatever influence you have placed upon them." He pointed the device at Rex and activated it. A high-pitched whining sound filled the air, and Rex stumbled as if someone had hit him. His eyes flashed red, and he took a step toward Lucy with his claws extended. "Rex, no!" Lucy said firmly. "Remember who you are. Remember that you chose to be my friend." Rex stopped, his whole body shaking as he fought against the machine's influence. The red in his eyes flickered back and forth with the amber color Lucy had grown to love. "Impossible," Zextak muttered, turning the device to maximum power. "The neural amplifier has never failed." But it was failing now. Rex's eyes settled back to amber, and he moved protectively in front of Lucy again. Storm and Blade flanked them on either side, forming a wall of living armor around the small human girl. "You want to know how I did it?" Lucy asked, stepping out from behind Rex so she could look Zextak in the eyes. "I talked to them like they were people instead of things. I shared my food with them. I sang them songs when they couldn't sleep. I treated them the way everyone deserves to be treated." Ravagers are not people, Zextak snarled. They are weapons created to serve the Kryn Empire. They were people before you turned them into weapons, Lucy replied. And they're still people inside, no matter what you did to them. One of the Kryn soldiers raised his plasma rifle, but Zextak held up a hand to stop him. I want to understand this before we eliminate the problem. Child, show me this control you claim to have over my beasts. Lucy looked up at Rex and smiled. It's not control, it's friendship. Rex, would you mind moving that broken table out of the way? Someone might trip over it. Rex gently picked up the overturned table with his massive claws and set it upright against the wall. His movements were careful and precise, nothing like the wild fury the Kryn expected from their warbeasts. Storm, could you please fix that window? The cold air is coming in, Lucy asked. Storm moved to the broken window and began arranging pieces of metal and debris to block the opening. He worked quietly and efficiently, like someone doing a favor for a friend. Blade, I think there might be more food in those cabinets. Would you check for me? Blade searched through the upper cabinets with surprising gentleness, his claws clicking softly against the metal doors. When he found a package of dried fruit, he brought it to Lucy and set it down carefully at her feet. Zextak stared in amazement. They obey you without question, yet I sense no psychic compulsion. How is this possible? Because I asked them nicely, Lucy said simply. And because they know I care about them. The war leader's 4 eyes narrowed. This ends now. Soldiers kill the child. Without her influence, the beasts will return to normal. The Kryn soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, Lucy said one word. Protect. All 3 Ravagers moved instantly. Rex leaped over Lucy and landed in front of the soldiers, his massive body blocking their line of fire. Storm and Blade moved to the sides, cutting off any escape routes, but none of the Ravagers attacked. They simply stood there, waiting. I said protect, not hurt, Lucy explained. They know the difference. Zextak backed toward the door, his neural amplifier device still in his hand. This is impossible. The conditioning cannot be broken. The psychic bonds cannot be severed. Maybe the problem is that you never asked them what they wanted, Lucy said. She walked over to Rex and scratched behind one of his ear holes. Did anyone ever ask you what you wanted to do with your life, Rex? Rex made a soft rumbling sound and nuzzled Lucy's shoulder. I thought not, Lucy said. Well, what do you want to do now? Rex looked at Zextak and the soldiers, then back at Lucy. He made a series of clicking sounds that somehow conveyed his meaning perfectly clearly. He wanted them to leave and never come back. Storm? Blade? What about you two? Both Ravagers looked at the Kryn forces with obvious distaste. Storm made a dismissive snorting sound. Blade simply turned his back on them as if they were not worth his attention. I think that's your answer, Lucy told Zextak. They want you to go away and leave them alone. The war leader raised his neural amplifier one more time, but before he could activate it, Rex simply reached out and plucked it from his hands. The device looked like a toy in the Ravager's massive claws. Rex examined it for a moment, then crushed it into scrap metal. My ship, Zextak said weakly. I must report this to High Command. They need to know what has happened here. You do that, Lucy said, and tell them that the Ravagers don't belong to the Kryn Empire anymore. They belong to themselves. Just then, the sound of human spacecraft engines filled the air outside. Through the windows, Lucy could see the familiar shapes of Colonial Defense Force ships landing in the forest clearing. Lucy! A voice called from outside. Lucy Martinez, are you in there? That's Commander Sullivan, Lucy said with a smile. The rescue ships are here. She walked to the broken doorway and waved at the approaching human soldiers. I'm okay, and I brought some friends. The soldiers stopped in amazement when they saw the 3 Ravagers standing peacefully behind the little girl. Commander Jake Sullivan himself stepped forward, his hand resting on his sidearm but not drawing it. Lucy, are you hurt? What happened to the Ravagers? They're not Ravagers anymore, Lucy explained. They're Rex, Storm, and Blade, and they're coming with us. Zextak and his remaining soldiers used the confusion to slip away to their own ship. Within minutes, The Kryn vessel was lifting off and heading for space. The war leader had much to explain to his superiors. Commander Sullivan looked from Lucy to the three massive creatures and back again. "How did you do this?" Lucy shrugged. "I was nice to them. Nobody had ever been nice to them before." As the human ships prepared to leave Kepler 442b, Lucy sat in the cargo bay with her three new friends. Rex lay curled up beside her like an enormous cat, while Storm and Blade rested nearby. For the first time in their lives, the former Warbeasts looked truly peaceful. "What happens now?" Commander Sullivan asked Lucy. Lucy looked up at Rex, who gazed back at her with gentle amber eyes. "I think we're going to change how the galaxy works," she said, one friend at a time. News of the 8-year-old girl who tamed 3 Ravagers spread across human space within days. Soon, other children were volunteering to help with captured Kryn Warbeasts. The empire that had conquered 73 worlds through fear and violence began to crumble as their ultimate weapons chose friendship over war. Lucy Martinez had proven something that no one else in the galaxy had ever believed. Sometimes the strongest force in the universe is simple kindness.